I'd like to now turn to the keynote section of our evening. And in order to get us kicked off to this, I'd like to invite Steve Laut to the podium. I'm not sure where you are right now. There you are. As he makes his way up here, we want to thank him for his leadership and his support of this evening's dinner, and also to be able to underpin for us in a few minutes of thoughts about the critical importance Canada plays to global energy security. So without any further ado, Mr. Laut, the stage is yours.
There's lots of notes up here on this podium. Hopefully, I could probably give another speech here too, but I'll stick to mine. So thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And thank you for that kind introduction. I really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank the Macdonald-Laurier Institute for having us here as being part of this great event tonight, and more importantly, for the important work and contributions they do on public policy issues in Canada. And also for allowing me to share with you two important messages. Developments that are really not that well understood by the Canadian public. It's in climate change and in energy. And also, I guess I should put the slides on here. And it's also about security and how we can supply that Indo-Pacific with low carbon intensity oil and gas. So there is forward-looking statements. You will see on your tables there is some papers there. There's a quiz. So if you can get all the answers right based on these two slides, you'll win a prize. So I don't want to be insulting, but you do have to love lawyers in the world. They really. So the great Canadian success story and Canada's unique leadership opportunity here is largely driven by a Canadian success story. And that unique leadership opportunity for Canada comes from taking a global perspective on climate change. After all, climate change is a global issue, and we should be taking a global perspective at the quest and the endless quest to meet the ever-increasing need for affordable and clean energy. Unlocking the power of a global perspective allows Canada to make a significant impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It'll reduce global poverty, it unleashes Canadian ingenuity, it supports economic and environmental balance, it will create a massive amount of high-paying jobs, it supports investment in a low-carbon energy mix, it nation builds and makes the world and Canada a better place. And Canada will become a world leader on climate change. We can drive an almost virtuous cycle of economic, environmental, and social performance, and at the same time make Canada a stronger, more cohesive nation. But let me just step back and take a look at the big picture. So the top 6 goals for the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals are poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality, and clean water. Affordable clean energy is ranked 7th and has a big impact on the ability to achieve those top 6 goals, as does climate change, which is ranked 13th. Human development is fueled by energy. The highest standards of living are in the West, with about 20% of the world's population. They also have the longest life expectancy, the highest level of education, and the lowest rate of air pollution deaths. And of course, we use the most energy, about 34 barrels per person per year. There's a strong correlation there. Roughly half the world's population uses less than 4 barrels per year per person. And if that half of the population were able to have access to affordable energy and lift themselves out of poverty to the levels just the same as the second quartile, which includes China, Turkey, Mexico, and Brazil, the world would need 27% more energy. And if those countries in that second quartile were to only go halfway to where we are in the West, combined, that would require 53% more energy. The world needs energy, and it needs lots of energy, and all types of energy, and it needs to be affordable. If we take a look at the December 2018 IPCC report highlighting the need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, their median scenario for total energy demand remains roughly flat. And it has a massive ramp up in the energy supplied from renewables, about 2.5 times from where we are today. Nuclear, 1.9 times by 2040. Natural gas fares pretty well at 80% of today's levels. But interestingly, the IPCC report has oil supply dropping by a factor of 0.69 in 2040. And that still meets the 1.5 degree scenario. Oil demand is still roughly 70 million barrels a day in 2040. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprising, coal still manages to hang in there at 25%. This assumes that the total energy demand remains flat. Of course, if we want to achieve those top 6 UN goals, we'll likely need 53% more energy. To do that, energy efficiency is going to have to mitigate that increase in demand. I don't know if it's going to be able to do it all, but let's assume that it does 50%, and the remainder is met by renewables and nuclear. Then renewables have to grow by 3.5 times, and nuclear by 2.8 times. In all scenarios, oil and gas is still a significant part of the energy mix to meet that 1.5 degree scenario. Who supplies that oil and natural gas should have the lowest greenhouse gas emissions, intensity, and the highest standard. Canada's oil and gas sector recognized the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we've been able to leverage technology and Canadian ingenuity, delivering impressive results. Canadian Natural ourselves have invested $3.4 billion in R&D since 2009. Essentially, Canada's oil and gas industry has taken what was branded as high-intensity oil in 2009, or some people will call dirty oil, and have made it what I would call the premium oil on the global stage. And we've done that all in 10 years, and the Canadian oil and gas sector is committed to do even better in the future. Canadian Natural has, by leveraging technology, innovation, and Canadian ingenuity, reduced our greenhouse gas emissions significantly in all our operations. We're also leaders in carbon capture and storage, and combined we've taken the equivalent of over 2 million cars off the road. That's roughly 5% of the cars on the road today in Canada. And this is just what Canadian Natural ourselves have done. The entire Canadian oil and gas sector has delivered similar, equally impressive results. Canadian ingenuity and our ability to innovate and leverage technology has taken what was very high intensity oil on a wells to combustion basis in 2009, that far right blue bar, to levels that are at or below the average in the green bars. That's an impressive Canadian success story. It's not 2009 anymore. And this is really the basis or the root cause that has generated this tremendous opportunity for Canada. And the success story is just getting started. We can, with new projects, leverage technology and Canadian ingenuity to do even better. With Canadian Natural's goal of reaching net zero emissions. Canada's oil and gas sector has made a significant positive impact on our greenhouse gas intensity, and we can make a huge impact on global emissions as well. And this is an immense opportunity for Canada. For instance, if the rest of the world achieved what Canadian oil and gas sector has done just in terms of flaring, the greenhouse gas emissions will be reduced by 23%. That's equivalent to taking 110 million cars off the road. To put that in perspective, that's more than 3 times the number of cars in Canada today. And the one LNG plant that Canada has approved, when on stream, is equivalent to taking 40 coal-powered plants offline, or the equivalent to reducing Canada's greenhouse gas emissions by 10%. We have the capacity here in Canada to build at least 5 of these LNG plants, which would be the equivalent to reducing Canada's greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. 50% is a big number, and this is the big opportunity. Yes, it's true, as the naysayers will say, if we produce more oil and gas in Canada, Canada's greenhouse gas emissions will go up. What is also true, and much more important, is that global greenhouse gas emissions will go down, and they will go down significantly. And at the same time, Canada can stay true and aligned with the Paris Climate Accord. In reality, not getting Canadian oil and gas onto global markets will increase global greenhouse gas emissions. So taking a global perspective is a tremendous opportunity for Canada and to make a huge positive impact on global climate change. It will also create thousands of quality jobs. Just building the 1 LNG plant under construction and the 3 pipelines proposed will create 900,000 person-years of work. Even more important are the long-term jobs needed to run and develop the oil and gas required to keep those facilities full. As you can see, the oil and gas sector employs roughly the same number of people as Canada's auto sector. Putting that into perspective, these new long-term jobs are equivalent to growing Canada's auto sector by roughly 20%. If we could grow the auto sector in Canada by 20%, this would be a national priority, as getting market access for Canada's oil and gas should be. The 528,000 jobs that the oil and gas industry creates are across Canada, with significant jobs in Ontario and Quebec actually being larger than those in BC and Saskatchewan. A strong and growing oil and gas sector is good for Canada, all of Canada. The leadership opportunity for Canada is here today. Supporting Canada's oil and gas sector and unlocking the power of a global perspective, we can make a significant positive impact on global greenhouse gas emissions. We can reduce global poverty, unleash Canadian ingenuity, and drive both environmental and economic performance, creating jobs and supporting investment in a lower carbon future while strengthening the nation. Canada has an immense opportunity to become a world leader and make not only Canada, but the world a better place, and should be a climate change and economic priority for Canada.